Hello, hello, everybody. How we doing?
Hello.
Hello, Alexandra. How you doing today?
I'm tired, but doing well.
You must be in the middle of prep, I'm guessing then.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. Okay. We're actually going to start off by doing a little vibe check, see how everybody is doing. So, why don't you give us some verbal discussion on, yeah, how's it going right now?
I'm waiting for that moment where everything clicks that everybody's telling me is eventually going to happen. Yeah, I'm not there yet. I feel like the time is just passing by so quickly and it's kind of the pressure is building as far as like knowing all the material, but also like when I'm doing practice tests, like scoring high enough. So that's kind of my mindset. I'm really just overall stressed.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the tricky part about it is that no matter what program you take, no matter what students you are, that there truly is a like culmination process that comes with bar prep. But the reality is that like as much as it's a culmination process, it's hard to know whether the program that you took, the direction that you're receiving, this, that, and the third, whether that path you're going down is actually leading you towards your outcome. And that's kind of the nerve-wracking part. So a little bit of a topic for a different conversation, but albeit still a good one to have and want to have with yourself, and to seek out mentorship. I could even stick around after the session for a little bit for those that are in that boat, of figuring out, kind of looking inside of like, all right, we're at week 5, we should start to feel as though the needle is moving. And so if it's not, that's definitely a good time to, consider doing something different, or making some adjustments. So yeah, but all that to say, we are here now. We're definitely going to find some, I think, some valuable information to see how we can improve our MBE scores. So before we jump into the official workshop, let me greet everybody. Hello, welcome to the second Road to Esquire session. I see Renelle has her camera on. Hopefully, you will not keep her by herself, everybody, and put your cameras on as well so we can see all of your beautiful faces. There we go. Okay. I don't like talking to black screens. And yes, I'm super excited to do this session in partnership with BWL. BWL has partnered with Legally Fit to offer you all some free resources as you all get ready to become Esquires. So today's workshop is focused all on MBE. We're going to be doing a masterclass, getting you guys again improved and taking some leaps in that arena. But yeah, super excited. Let's go ahead and start off with a quick little survey so I can get a pulse for the room. I'm going to start what is called a Slido. It's an in Zoom survey feature. I'm going to also share the link. If anybody does not have the most up-to-date version, you can go to the web browser version of this. Okay, let me put that also in the chat, but you can, if it popped up in your sidebar in Zoom, feel free to just answer the questions there. And the, oops, hold on one second. That's actually the wrong one. Let's go back. Slido. So don't go to that link either. I started the wrong. Recent Slidos. Road to Esquire, part 2. Here we go. So ignore that link. All right. And then now it's active. And then let me, actually, that link was correct. So now your link is good to go. And the question is live. 2 people are typing. Good. You guys got it going. All right. Answer those questions for me. Sorry about Zoom user. Sorry about the bronchitis. Yeah, I hope you feel better. All right. You all please continue to answer. I'll start talking about some of the things that I'm seeing. Looks like most of us are doing July 25. So we are in the thick of it. We got some Feb 26 as well, but looks like majority are taking the exam here in July. All right. For the July 25 bar takers, we are in week 5, the halfway point. How are you feeling? All right. 8% says in the zone, 42% tired, but pushing through. 33% says struggling but trusting the process, and 17% I'm not even studying just yet. But I'm glad that we're currently at 0% for ready to give up. That's good. And we're also at 0% for struggling and spiraling. Also good. Okay. We'll take the wins where we can get them. All right. Next, we have any lingering issues regarding multiple choice. Great. Um, so second guessing myself, always a popular one. Okay. Um, not doing a thorough analysis, not doing enough practice questions, not taking time to identify and appreciate the patterns. We'll talk about patterns today. Definitely something very important to do. That's how you learn in life, everybody. And there's some very basic principles in bar prep that we carry over from real life, right? Which is do not make the same mistake twice. Aaron, can you finish the quote for me? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice,
Can't be fooled again.
can't be fooled again. That's right. I like that version of it. And as if we are, shame on me, right? So fool me once, shame on you for fooling me. Fool me twice, shame on me. Overall, everybody, that's a mindset that you want to have in bar prep, right? You want to have this approach to being ready to get a lot of questions wrong, right? And it's like, okay, shame on you for that tricky question. Shame on you for throwing that curveball at me. But you know what? Trick me once, you won't trick me again. And then that's where the onus, the accountability, and the competitiveness comes out of like, I'm not going to get a question like this wrong again. And so when you have that mentality and you approach it from that way, that's how we really start to see the improvement in essays, multiple choice, PTs, etc. So yes, patterns is a big way of how we do that. We'll do some practice. Next, not doing enough practice questions. All right. And so can I hear from somebody who put down they're not doing enough practice questions? Is it because you feel as though your program's not assigning enough? Is it because they are assigning enough, but you're not finding yourself getting through them? For me to better assist there, let me kind of hear a little bit as to the reason why we're not doing enough practice.
Yeah, for me it's just life in general. I'm working full time and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not using like a program per se. I'm using Studicata and then like John Grossman videos, and then I've got UWorld. So I'm kind of studying on my own, but I just don't feel like I have enough time to finish all like 800 questions by July.
800 questions. Is that
Like
all that?
UWorld, like all of the UWorld questions.
Okay. Is your goal within your 10 weeks to do a total of 800 or you have 800 remaining?
No, sorry, 1800.
Okay,
So
yes,
I
because
I've completed like maybe 500.
okay, got it. Because yes, my goal is that we all get to 2,200 questions before
Okay.
that's my magic number. And so Alexandra, it's a lot like law school, right? Where, there's more work assigned than what you can complete, right? You got all the cases to read and brief, you got all the outlining to do, and all these other things. In bar prep, right? There's so much to do, but we simply have to prioritize them. Number one. Two, to be honest, when you're not necessarily following a full program and instead, like you said, you're kind of more or less using a collection of materials, that is where then it's difficult to have a schedule that has that time allotment necessary to reach that number. So all that said, with whatever schedule you're making, you got to figure out where can you pull from, where are you spending time that you can maybe spend a little less time for the sake of exposure to more questions.
Mhm.
And then lastly, and something that we'll talk about today too, is the pace at which we go through questions. I am a big fan of what I call acceptance, right? And when it comes into the world of bar prep, as opposed to being a fighter, a challenger, right? Somebody who pushes back, somebody who questions the law. With a lot of these things, right? You simply have to accept that this is the factual scenario and sequence, and this was the outcome. You don't second guess yourself, and to be fair, sometimes questions are written poorly, sometimes questions are wrong, but that's like 5% of the time, right? Most of the time, it's like, this is the way it is. And you want to take out your emotion and your own opinions about what you think it should be. So those are some of the reasons why, students slow down even on days where they are doing questions. Alexandra, my focus is like, boom, do a question. Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? What can I learn from it? Move on to the next. So there's definitely a pace that we have as well. So it's those two things, Alexandra, that can maybe help with what you were saying, which is one, pull from something else in your schedule to get more practice in. And then when you are doing that practice, make sure you're keeping pace. And Legally Fit, we have days dedicated solely to multiple choice. And in those situations, they try to do about 95 questions in a day. So that gives you guys some reference. And they do that at least twice a week. Okay, Zoe.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to, because I am doing a prep course. I'm doing Themis, so I don't know if anybody else is doing that, but I went to Pepperdine, and so they have like a bar mentor program through like our professors. And one thing I just like was thinking of when Alexandra was talking was just like I have been adding in because I have like the U World also, and like I've probably done like 500 plus questions on just Themis. And like we did the Adaptabar where they're like, you can get your money back. I've just been like doing like 5 questions of like really old topics. Like I started with contracts and I just try to do like at least 5 questions a day from that subject to like keep
Mm-hmm.
it like fresh, even though like I am in a course. So I feel like that has been helping because I've like kind of figured out a way, like if I do like 25 questions a day in like different topics and just like do small segments of them throughout the day, it honestly does help a lot more than just trying to sit down for like doing 25 questions at this point can possibly take you an hour because we don't know anything. So doing five
Yeah.
questions and being like, okay, I'm giving myself like 10, 15 minutes to do these 5 questions. I feel like it's better. So I just wanted to like throw out that suggestion
Yeah,
for
that's awesome.
Alexandra.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Zoe. Yeah, I love the community base of what's working for us. And I also, having, almost heard it all, seen it all at this point, I actually am not mad at that variation because sometimes we make variations and adjustments and we might go too far or overcorrect and it can create other problems. So for example, if Zoe had mentioned like, yeah, I'm doing 50 multiple choice questions every single day, despite what my program is saying, that would be a little bit of a red flag because that's something so significant that you are distracting from the intentionality of said course that you're taking. Whereas something, as mentioned, 5 questions, right, it doesn't seem as though that's going to have an impact on still accomplishing your task for the day. So it's a good way of a small bite-sized amount to add in every day. I generally don't advise that like, oh, one essay a day or so many multiple choice. But again, something like 5, 10 questions that is negligible as far as like keeping up with the program. And it is something that, again, is helping get that exposure up. So I'm not mad at
Oh,
that.
and I also just want to say, like, I do it after I finish my Themis stuff for the day or like
Yes.
before because I'm like, okay, I'm burnt out by 5 if that's when I'm done. But if I can just do 5 questions about contracts and I haven't looked at contracts today, it's just helpful to like stay on top of the subject.
Yeah, and make you feel. I'm sure it has a little psychological effect, saying that it was earlier subjects that you like. All right, I'm not so far away from some of these things. So yeah, I like that a lot. Okay, let's see what else we have. Not doing a thorough analysis. The majority of us, let's talk about the majority of us, talk about second guessing ourselves. So this one's again a popular issue, and the thing that we have to do here is take literally daily opportunities to work on this, right? Second guessing ourselves in multiple choice is not a multiple choice issue. That is a like mental process issue, right? Where we are not confidently choosing our answer choices and being okay if it's right or wrong, right? So what I want you all to do for those that identify with that second guessing, number one, right, as we'll talk about today, my strategy is to avoid going straight to the answer choices after you read the question to see which answer sounds the best. That's going to leave you stuck between two answer choices because they designed them for two answer choices to look really good. They designed them where one looks really good but is wrong, right? So you're playing into their hand in a sense by simply, again, reading the question and just jumping straight into the answer choices. So we'll talk about the, again, my strategy on how we fix that. But other than that, the idea is that whenever you're doing essays, multiple choice, right, answering questions in this workshop, when you are presented with a fork in the road or you're presented with an analysis, I want you to sin boldly. I want you to pick a side, pick an answer. And again, remember, as I tell my bar students all the time, you don't take the bar exam until July, right? Or whenever your exam is. Don't fear being wrong. Embrace being wrong, but also embrace learning. So if we can work on that literally in the daily opportunities we have, I think that is the best way to avoid second guessing. Don't lean on the answer choices and practice more confident answer selections in the way that we work through our, again, every portion of the exam, essays, PTs, multiple choice. Alexandra, question?
Not a question, but it's more of like I don't want this to turn into a therapy session, but like in my head, I like there's a part of me that hates doing multiple choice because I hate like scoring really bad. And and that's like something that I'm working on because obviously like you can't learn when like you have to fail to learn, right? So I just wanted to put that out there if anyone is in the same boat. I just like getting 50s and 40s, it just like morale like hits really low. But
Yes.
you just have to like do it. And I get that, but it's an
For whatever
obstacle.
it's worth, Alexandra, I say at this point, I am a unlicensed therapist. I think that is majority of my role of what bar prep is these days, seemingly with all the law already figured out as far as what we present. But all that to say, I think we can have a brief moment addressing that because I think that's very valid. We're still in the middle of bar prep. So I think mindset shifting is very powerful to set yourself up for success. And yes, Alexandra, what I try to prep my students from the very day one of bar prep with is you are going to get more questions wrong than you are right. Okay. And so I think the reality is that you're coming into this process having graduated from law school, right? Having accomplished whatever success that you have in your previous education endeavors. Um, Everybody has to be humbled to the bar exam and the nature that this is a beast in and of itself. No matter what school you went to, all from your Harvards all the way to your unaccredited schools, right? You're faced with a new set of information that may be similar as some of your professors taught it, but also very different than how some of your professors taught it. It's a different way of being tested. Not all professors teach you and test in a bar prep manner. For example, like some professors would give like 3-4 page fact patterns that you analyze an essay for 2-3 hours, and it's like that's not what we're doing anymore. It's either 30-minute essays or an hour essay depending on the jurisdiction. So it feels as though there's all this like lead up that you feel like you should be scoring higher and ready for this, but you are almost always babies, right, when coming into this process. And you have to give yourself the proper expectations and grace for that development. And so, yeah, the last thing I'll end it with, Alexandra, is yes, you will get more questions right than you will wrong. And so the goal is to be one that can take that, right? So I had to, when I was in your shoes now going on 12 years ago, I had to put myself in this mindset of like, all right, I got another question wrong. Yes, let's learn, right? And this is like almost now just like, mind control of like, yeah, I can't beat myself up. Let's look at this. Let's spin this a different way. Like this is an opportunity for growth. So however you do it, try to accomplish it. But what I can promise you is you're not alone. And speaking of which, and Ashley, please keep that hand up. I do want to hear from you as well. I just want to talk about the percentages on what we're looking at when I say, what is your average score? So Alexandra, 53% of us said we're scoring between 50 and 60%. 7% of us said 40 to 50, and 40% said 60 to 70%. So we had nobody in here who said they were scoring 70% and above. We also had nobody that was scoring 40% and below. And funny enough, Alexandra, those are the two extremes. If you're scoring 70% and above, you're just, crushing bar prep, right? And again, 70% is not typically what we consider crushing it in real life, right? That's a C, but in this space, like that's crushing it. And below 40 would start to be a little bit of a red flag of like, okay, if you're averaging 40% amongst most of your sets, something is a disconnect there as far as your understanding of the law. But if you're anywhere between that 40% to 70%, right? That is essentially your middle place and your safe zone. And based off of everything that I'm saying, Alexandra, like I think we should put the context together now. If I'm saying 40% to 70%, that big range is all a safe zone. What matters the most about each student being in that 40 to 70%? What do I care the most about what that student is doing, no matter if that 40 or 69%? What's the most important thing that they're doing?
Are you asking me?
Mm-hmm. What's the most important thing that whether you're at 41% or 69%, and I'm saying you're both in the safe zone, but what really is going to move the needle as far as being in a position to pass?
If you're like reviewing the wrong answers and learning from them.
That's important. But okay, and that last part, would you say?
Learning from them.
That's it, right? Learning from them, right? There's so many of us that are going through questions just to check off the box that like, hey, I did X number of questions today, but did you learn from it? If I gave you that same question later that day, the next day, are you going to still get it right? Or if you got it wrong before, you're going to get it right now. So that's where again, I've been doing this long enough to know, right? Like just because you're getting some good scores on these practice questions, when you get to the bar, it's going to look a little different. And so it's all about the patterns that you can get. And again, the growth that you do, not the scores so much. Again, the outliers raise a flag, but it's all about the growth. Yes. Okay. Ashley.
Hi. My question specifically is for retakers. So where I'm at right now is for the last two attempts, I've scored consistently low on MBEs. And I'm not sure how to approach this third time around on whether to just focus on MBEs or how much time to split between MBEs and essays, or I don't know. I don't know what you would suggest.
Yeah. So we're about 5 weeks out now from the exam. So hopefully you've had a strategy in place that you've been using. But I will give you my overall rule of thumb is that for a repeat taker, right, you never want to only focus on one area of weakness because then you'll create another weakness. So you want to have balance, and then just what that balance looks like depends on your individual score, strengths, etc. For example, I had a student before who was like almost like exceptional in their essays, like literally like super super high scores on their essays, and then really 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 bad in their multiple choice. With that type of person, that's the rare scenario where I suggested a very, disproportionate allocation of their study time towards multiple choice. But for majority of us, that's like, okay, my essays are a little bit better, or my multiple choice is a little bit better. I typically want you to stay even keeled and more so change your strategy for those different arenas. And also something that's not talked about a whole lot, Ashley, is that because this bar exam is graded in a cumulative way, don't forget everybody to, improve your strengths as well to counterbalance your weakness. So that's why, again, I want you to still spend good amount of time on both. So let's say, my essays are here and my multiple choice is here, right? Now, obviously, I want to get my multiple choice up, but I can also raise my essays up. That's going to raise my total score. So instead of just trying to get my multiple choice, my essays stay here or even drop a little bit, and then my multiple choice goes here. Like, no, I want to kind of move everything up. And again, points are points, right? We don't discriminate against them. But yes, does that provide some, clarity as to how to approach that?
Yeah, and I just have one follow-up in terms of like subjects wise on MBE. Would you recommend me sticking to subjects that I'm weaker at and doing sets that are only one subject per set, or mixed sets from here on out?
Yeah. So again, like I kind of have to sit for just a half a second and maybe we could come back to it after class of just like, again, like off the hip, what to do in week 5. And I don't know so much of what you've done up until this point, but I'll just give you some of the, again, context and typical philosophy of what I preach to be the foundation, which is in my program, I have my students do majority of their practice is focused on a single subject at a time, right? Doing mixed set questions is, again, more it's more replicating a test-like environment, right? And test-like environments aren't always the best for a learning environment. So if you do a crim law question into a contracts, into a torts, like we're just going through it and see if we can get it right, right? But when you are doing a consecutive set of Fourth Amendment crim pro questions, or even just crim pro questions for that matter, you should be then more likely to be able to start to see the patterns and then put what you're learning into practice for the next type of question you see that's similar. And I think that's where we then see more growth. So I'm always a big fan of doing a lot more set specific, subject specific, and even topic specific sets of questions as opposed to mixed sets. And like I said, majority. So because we have to still practice at some point the way that we're going to play the game, right? The bar exam, you still need to factor those mixed sets in. But again, I would say about 80-20, 80% being subject or topic focused, and about 20% of your practice should be mixed sets.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So great conversation, right? To get this going. Yes, a little mini therapy session, some mindset shifting, right? Just as important as some of the skill and strategy. So that was a great way to get us started. So what we're going to now do is jump into now some actual questions together. And I'm going to share with you all some strategy on how to go through questions, how to learn from them, the process that I used, I have my students use, etc. So let me go ahead and do a screen share on the iPad so we can go through this together. Okay, share screen. Right. Let me go back to the Slido. We're going to stop that one and go to number 1. Start broadcast. Okay. So this is question number 1. All right. So I want a volunteer who wants to go through this first question with me. All right, Zoe, I see your physical hand being raised. Luckily, I saw your box right there on my front screen. Zoe, walk me through what your steps are, and let's just go through this together, like how you go through a question.
Okay, so first I read the call of the question, which this one is just the court should, so it doesn't really give us that much information, but usually for me, I highlight just what the call of the question is. This one is obviously very short. Then I go through the question and see like what information I gain from the actual question. And then I kind of make a predictive outcome based off of the information I read and like reading comprehension before I go to the answer choices. And then kind of from there, like pray that one of the answer choices is the
May the
actual,
gods be ever in my favor.
yeah. Hope that it is. Obviously still doing these open notes, so usually just
Good.
cross checking.
We'll talk about that today. Open note practice. Also love it. Out of curiosity, because usually the big box companies don't like you doing open note. Is that the instruction you received, or is that the adjustment that you decided to make?
That's what my mentor told me to do.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, that's definitely not
He's very like,
typically
he's like, yeah.
the crowd, the big box company method is typically not open book stuff. So okay, so we have call the question. All right, so this is pretty good. Great starting point, Zoe. I'm gonna have some suggestions for developing this some more, but let's go ahead, everybody. And I want everybody to just kind of like go through this question. And Zoe knew what her strategy was. Maybe you know what yours is, maybe you don't. And like just going through it, you can start to identify it. But I want everybody to go ahead and do number one, and then go ahead and select the answer choices. All right. And then I'm going to show you my method after you guys put your answer choice in.
Where are we supposed to put the answers? In the chat?
So do you see there should be that same Slido? You could either use the link or in your poll in the sidebar.
I also have a question. I guess we'll go through it when we talk about your strategy, but I've heard, because I went to a talk with Jonathan Grossman, and he said like for multiple choice, when you get to like two answers, when you get it down to two answers, you should have like opposite, like one should be grant, one should be deny, because you would know like that helps you figure out if the subject matter is correct. But then like on Themis, they say like to get down to the like both answers are grant or both answers are deny. So
Yeah, I think I never was faced with that question before and didn't realize there was competing theories out there with that. I haven't heard that before, but yes, I would say I lean more towards the latter of like trying to do an accurate analysis that at least points me in the right direction of grant or deny, and then look for the answer choice that best matches what I would call the focal point of the question. So yeah, we'll talk about it some more, but yeah, like, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, but that's the beginning part of the answer. All right, so let's go ahead and start to talk about this. So we have a little bit of some answer choices for, or some selections for every single answer choice. We got A, B, C, and D. D being most popular, B being second most popular. But let's talk about this first, right, and go through it. So let me first talk about my subject specific tips. Now, this is something that hopefully you've been gathering from your bar prep resources, your program, the collection of your programs or resources, et cetera. But you kind of want to have some subject specific tips. So for example, Zoe, is there anything about Crim Pro question that you know to keep in mind when you're going through these?
I can't really speak to Crim Pro because I just learned it today. So
Okay.
yeah, I can't really
So
say
yeah, no,
about
fair
that.
enough, fair enough. So yeah, let me provide you with some. Okay. So for example, one of the things that we want to remember with Crim Pro, everybody, is make sure you are applying the law, not your emotion. Right. So this is going to be one of those subjects where it's very easy to be led by emotion, because this is going to be very rich, passionate, emotion invoking facts, right? That could resonate, hit home, be something that you're just passionate about, etc. So you have to remember to not detach from your law. It's a big issue that we have with multiple, or in general, with essays or multiple choice. We detach from the rules. We start to just wing it and go with what we feel. Part of success, just like many areas of life, is about remaining disciplined to what gets you through it. So yeah. Also, when it comes into the world of Crim Law and Crim Pro, a lot of us, most of us, end up identifying more as pro-prosecution or pro-defendant. Not too many of us are naturally just right down the middle. And so whatever one you identify as pro-prosecution, pro-defendant, you have to make sure you are seeing the other side so you're not making one-sided analysis. So that's something to remember for crim law, for crim pro and crim law. Next, reading comprehension, right? Very important for all classes, but for crim pro and specific, right? It's always going to be motions. And you need to be making sure you're aligned with who's the motion for, what is the motion for, right? And all those things. So don't get lost in the sauce there, because sometimes you have multiple parties involved, right? Multiple pieces of evidence, and you don't want to get the question wrong simply because you're misaligned. All right, next, do a thorough analysis. Crim Pro is one of those subjects where there are many ways to get to a particular outcome, right? Or many parts to a rule. So for example, let's say, Zoe, I searched your room right now that you're studying in, and let's say Sila does not work. Okay, does that mean that my search was not reasonable?
Not necessarily, no.
Because there is a list of other exceptions that could work, right? So it's like, sure, Sila doesn't work, but maybe it was exigency, or maybe it was this, right? So there's just that type of thought process that, it's like hearsay, and these other concepts that you have to really do a thorough analysis. You could be accurate in saying that, yes, Sila wasn't met, but if another exception was, the outcome should still be that this was reasonable. So things like that, you have to do a thorough analysis. It's very easy to get caught up with the exception that comes front to mind, but you then miss one that also applied. So doing a thorough analysis. And then lastly, Crim Pro is, I would say, it's one of those sneaky subjects, right? It's like, I think it's challenging, especially because it can be overwhelming with the amount of facts, the amount of things going on. But if you work through it and you get to that certain, light at the end of the tunnel point with Crim Pro, the questions actually become easier. And I believe they then require you to analyze as you go, because the questions can be so layered. You want to be able to, almost to the point where, if you're reading a contract, you can be like, oh, yeah, there's an offer. Oh, that wasn't actually acceptance there, right? As you're reading through, you want to actually be able to get that skill with Crim Pro. So all that to say, quick little lesson there. Those are examples of subject-specific tips. And again, very nice to have, some notes on each subject of that. So when you're entering into that, you're just kind of aware of those. Let's next talk about general strategy. All right. I'll start to write these down just so we can see them. And then I'll give you guys something to take a screenshot of later. But let's look at the difference here, Zoe, of my approach and yours. First one is I do not read the call of the question first. I don't think this one is necessarily wrong to do, but just like you mentioned, Zoe, the call of the question is not always beneficial. So, right, and it's not necessarily always really indicative of too much. Sometimes it is, but again, here it just says the court should. It doesn't do anything for me. So this is a perfect question to do to illustrate why I don't lean on that routinely, because it's not always beneficial. So what I actually do, Zoe, is I start off by reading or skimming the answer choices. Skim answer choices. I spend 2 to 5 seconds doing this, everybody. And what I'm doing is identifying what area of law I'm dealing with. So I see here we have an officer. Okay, I'm thinking all right, crim law, crim pro, flight. Okay, observe the art. Oh, I see reasonable expectation of privacy. I see curtilage. I see warrant. I could stop there. Zoe, what world am I in within criminal procedure?
Search and seizure.
Yeah, so specifically Fourth Amendment within search and seizure. Good. So Zoe, what we've done right now, before even reading the question, I'm grounded and anchored in what subject, and if I'm lucky, what specific topic. So that's why we skim the answer choices, to anchor ourselves. So now when I'm reading,
can I ask a question before we
let's hold, raise your hand for me, and then I'll go through all of them, and then we'll do that, just because, yeah, there might be a lot of questions as we go through it. So the next step after we skim the answer choices is then going to be read the question. Okay. Now, when we read the question, obviously, again, reading comprehension, everybody, is the silent killer in bar prep. And so you have to make sure you are closely reading. You're not reading too slow, but you're also not reading too fast, which I think more of us struggle with. And you're getting everything down right. Okay. After we read the question, the third step is to pinpoint the specific subject and topic being tested. All right, so I'm going to start to work back through this question. I will take that question quickly, Zoe. If anybody else has any questions as we go through, write them down, and then I'll also address those. So I'll take your question first so we can get that out, and then I want to start walking through these steps together.
Sorry,
Oh,
this is more of like a general question, but how do you skim the answers without not wanting to choose an answer?
oh, yeah, great question. I mean, you saw what I did there, right? Like, I'm not even reading the answer choices, Zoe, for like a sense of like, I didn't read a full sentence. I'm literally just like skimming for buzzwords. So that prevents me from even passing opinion on what may look right or wrong. So that's how I have that discipline where I'm literally just looking for buzzwords. Yep. Okay, so Zoe, let's go through this. Can you first give me just a quick reading comprehension summary of what took place in the fact pattern?
There was an anonymous tip about marijuana in someone's backyard. When I thought backyard, I thought curtilage. Um, they also have a 15-foot fence around their house or around that area, which leans to the curtilage versus open field analysis that you would
Great.
potentially go through. Um, and they tried to get around it by doing plain view, but they weren't able to see it from the street, which would have been an exception if they were able to. Um, and then they used a helicopter to go over the house, and then essentially they found it by going by aerial flight. And that's what how they obtained their search warrant based on probable cause at that point.
Okay. And so essentially, there's actually a little bit more to this question, right? Because you actually, what they don't really talk about in detail, but what's also implied is that ultimately they went into the house and searched it and took the weed, seemingly, right? Because at this point, the defendant is prosecuted
Okay.
for it and wants to suppress it. But they don't really talk about that point. And for all intents and purposes, which is what I was alluding to earlier, Zoe, like you got to go where the question is taking you with a lot of these things. You got to follow the facts. Like, like don't miss the joke. Don't miss the punchline. You got to like lean into like, where is this taking me? And this one does have a focus on this whole aerial view. Right. And so there we go. Like reading comprehension, we have a sense now of what the focus is, what's going on. So can we pinpoint the specific topic? Like, what is the question of law here? Because again, what happens is, Zoe, we'll just start to like detach from the law and just kind of like feel out from what we remember, feel out from our intuition what the answer is. But no, like every question is, starts with a particular rule that they're testing. So we want to find out what that rule is. And can you identify what that rule is here?
Whether the warrant was valid.
Okay. And let's go a little bit more specific.
Okay. The search warrant was valid.
So whether the search warrant was valid. Okay, so I'm going to give a little quick lesson in Crim Pro to help identify this one before for this one, because I think it's an issue before the search warrant. So my mnemonic or approach to Crim Pro questions for Fourth Amendment is GSR. Every time I do Fourth Amendment is GSR. G stands for government action, that the conduct at hand had to be done by a government actor. Is that met here, Zoe?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was done by police. That was typically a gimme. Now, the next one is standing. In order to have standing, you have to have a search or you have to have a seizure, one of the two. And the way that this works typically is what you want to do is list out the things that are arguably searches and seizures that led to the taking of whatever evidence. So what are we dealing with as far as officer conduct that's arguably a search here?
They went into his house.
Before they went to his house,
They used the helicopter.
Yes,
The
the
view.
aerial observation. That's the first thing of like looking into this space, right? That we have to analyze. Okay. And then again, they didn't really talk about it so much, but the implied thing is that they searched the home and seized the marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, after you do that, just to kind of give you the whole quick framework, everybody, for GSR, after you identify the searches and seizures, assuming your analysis tells you that they are actually searches and seizures, the next thing you do is assess whether or not they are reasonable. And you have to go through each one. A search or seizure is reasonable by one of two methods. What are the two methods, Zoe?
I really don't know.
All good. Any phone a friend? Anybody co-counsel? What are the two ways for a search or seizure to be reasonable? Either you have a blank or a
Do you have to have
blank.
probable cause or reasonable suspicion?
Ooh, close but no cigar. That's by the way, the Crim Pro favorite answer, right? Always probable cause. And it's like that's typically not the answer, funny enough. Aaron?
An arrest warrant or one of the exceptions applies.
So not arrest warrant, but just warrant,
I mean,
right? We don't,
yeah,
depending
warrant.
on what it is. Yep, a warrant or a warrant exception. So that's from a big picture, Zoe. What we want to look at, right? Every search and seizure has to be reasonable. Either there was a warrant to do it, or there was a warrant exception. That's the big picture. All right, nice little quick big picture on Crim Pro. Coming back into this, what's the specific rule being tested? It's actually, everybody, whether or not this is actually a search. All right. So again, 3 is pinpoint rule being tested. And the rule being tested is the rule for what is a search and whether or not aerial observation is a search. Can anybody provide their version of the rule for what is a search under criminal procedure rules, please? And actually, I'll just go to mine. I have the outline right here. You guys can see a little version of the legally fit outlines. All right, so here we go. The government's conduct amounts to a Fourth Amendment search if the defendant had a reasonable expectation of privacy in the places or items searched. Reasonable expectation of privacy is determined by the totality of the circumstances. Some of what I call the rebuttable presumptions of expectation of privacy is if you own the place searched, if the place searched was your curtilage, which this may be, or if you were an overnight guest of the place searched. If it was an item, if you own the item, and if it was a person, obviously you have an expectation of privacy in your person. Now, these are rebuttable presumptions. Like this makes it a strong argument for the defendant that the government did search them, right, or their item or place. The counter argument, if applicable, is you held this out to the public, in which there is then no reasonable expectation of privacy. And so that's why Zoe was saying, like, oh, it kind of contrasts with the open fields doctrine. And she was talking about that. And you have some various sub rules: open fields, use of technology, right? Records kept by others, dog sniffs, cell phones. These are all sub rules to help with what is held out to the public. Let's see if we can pause there without going into any further detail. And let's see if that's enough to help us answer whether or not this was a search. So Zoe, we pinpointed the specific rule. We are now doing our analysis on our own. Do your analysis. We have not looked at the answer choices still. We have not read them, looked at them, assessed them at all. We're doing our analysis. Based off of that, would you say that this amounts to a search or not?
I would say yes.
Okay. First off, kudos. Whether you're right or wrong, I love that you gave me, I'm going to say yes. That's how we work on everybody, not second guessing ourselves, right? Just going what we think based off of our discussion. So if you're going to go with yes, then that means that this was a search. There was all these searches here. Then the question is, do you think that aerial observation, that search was reasonable?
I
Was
do
there a
not.
warrant to do the aerial observation?
I use officer. No. Was there a warrant to do it? No. They obtained the
Nope.
warrant after the
So
observation.
it was no warrant. Then you'd have to know all of your warrant exceptions. The first one is SILA. Is the aerial observation going to be allowed under SILA?
A search. What is SILA again? Search incidents to lawful arrest.
Correct.
Um, I don't think so.
Yeah. Was anybody arrested prior to this helicopter flyover?
Oh yeah, no. So when this is like the automobile exception and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So SILA is
Okay.
not going to work. Plain view is not going to work. The automobile is not an automobile is not going to work. Consent's not going to work. Exigency, right? So essentially, none of the exceptions are going to work. So we're
Yeah.
going, yes, there was a search. No, it was not reasonable. So that means you're going with yes, violation.
Yes.
All right. So you do your analysis. Step number 5. After you do your analysis, you find the matching answer choice. And now this is where you go in and you find the answer choice that best reflects all that hard work you just did. Find the answer that not only has the right outcome, but also has something in the explanation that's aligned with what you focused on, right? Also prepare yourselves, as I'm sure you've seen, since we're all, for most of us, we're halfway through bar prep. You don't always get the most satisfying answer choices either, right? So we have to prepare ourselves for, like, sometimes you're going to do all that hard work and it's just going to give you a more summary, generic version of that same analysis you did. And sometimes you have to just accept that. All right. But yes, find the matching answer. Again, I'll give this all to you pretty here in a second. So bear with this writing over text and all that stuff. That says find the matching answer. So what answer choice is going to best match the analysis that you just did?
Well, I went with B. So
So right now you said that there was a search and that
yeah.
it was not reasonable. And so therefore that there is a violation. Okay, so since there's a violation, you should grant the motion. Okay, good. So B makes sense to grant the defendant's motion because of violation, because the defendant had a reasonable expectation of privacy in the curtilage around her house, and the police did not have a warrant. Okay, so Zoe, the final step is to reflect and take notes, right? And that could either go quickly because you got it right, or it could take a little bit longer because you got it wrong. So reflect, take notes, and look at patterns. Reflect, notes, pattern. Okay. So I'm going to tell you, Zoe, that is incorrect. The correct answer is D. Okay. The correct answer choice is D. Now, my question to you is that, and sometimes I like to challenge myself, and I encourage you to challenge yourselves. Before you even look at the answer choice, first of all, don't be changing your answers now to D. I've been seeing some of the things move. I hate when people stick with your wrong answer. It's okay. All right. So, Zoe, what I want to encourage us all to do is to see if we can figure out where we went wrong before we even look at the answer choice. So, can you like assess logically, like, what was the individual step where you probably went wrong?
Well, I was between B and D.
No. Not in the answer choices, specifically in the analysis that we did. That's most important. So where in the analysis that we did can we say we probably went wrong?
In the analysis.
Something had to be off in those steps, right? Exactly, because you had a whole analysis and we picked an answer consistent with that analysis. So where might you have gone wrong?
Probably just with you do have a reasonable expectation of privacy, like within the curtilage of your home. Um, so I think that was like, okay, like that's kind of what drew me to B.
But again, that's what I'm saying. Like, you're being drawn to the answer choices, not so we're not focusing the analysis. I'm going to see if Christine's going to help us out as far as co-counsel, and if not, I'll provide the answer. Christine?
Okay, thank you. This is going to sound real collateral, but I'm just going to say I've been out of law school since 2009, and things are a whole lot more clear than they present themselves to be while we're matriculating in this program.
Mm-hmm.
This question for me was, if you keep it outside, everybody's going to see it. There is no reasonable expectation if you're growing drugs in your yard. If you got a 15-foot fence up that is not visible through, which is what this person had. I hear you, Alexandra, or JK. What really sticks out to me is it would be unreasonable if this drug were inside the house and somebody's
Yeah. And Christine, I want to say you are 100% accurate with your instinct and your outcome. But before we go further, I want to redirect you though, because even what you're going down now is a bit more of an accumulation of knowledge that we are generally leaning on, as opposed to, I want us to stay as attached to the applicable rule at hand. So all that this is to modify the analysis that Zoe did, and Zoe, this is what I was looking for, and Christine, you were knocking on that door, is that when we're looking at our rule and we're talking about whether or not there was a reasonable expectation of privacy, right? You leaned on the fact that yes, right, like this whole rebuttable presumption that this is the curtilage, and in fact, it is curtilage. But we mentioned that even if it is curtilage, even if you own the place, any of those things, if you held that out to the public, then that defeats the argument that you had a reasonable expectation of privacy. And Christine, that's all you essentially want to stay attached to your rule and quickly, boom, right there. This is ultimately held out to the public. And when you go back to your question, everybody, the reality is that when you're looking at a police helicopter flying over, Zoe, does it say that they were in public airspace or private airspace?
No.
So what do we have to assume? If it does not specifically say one or the other, what do we have to assume?
That it's in a public airspace.
Exactly. So if you're in public airspace and you're able to see something, is there any use of a technology that is not generally available to the public here?
No, because it's a helicopter, which is generally available to the public.
Yeah, there's no like special binoculars or anything crazy. So it's like, yep, I'm in public airspace. They see it. So there becomes this argument that actually trumps the analysis that you did, right? Which is this actually is held out to the public. And so therefore, right, the whole analysis changes. This is not an actual search. And so since this is not a search, to begin with, right, that changes the fact that this then is no violation. Make sense, Zoe?
Yeah, it does. I guess this would go into what I was explaining to you about like the two answers that are both like the opposite answers that I was telling you about earlier. Those two would be the most like similar in
Of
what they
course,
were
B and D, right?
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to explain with like the
Yes.
opposite conclusions, because they're about the same thing, but they're
And that's
not.
fair. And then
Yeah.
that's why I'm telling you that that's not my recommendation, because again, you have the risk of what you just did, right? Which is like, B sounds great. Expectation of
Yeah.
privacy is in there. Curtilage, which is sounds great in there. Right? All that stuff is there. They did not have a warrant, right? It feels really good. But instead, I'm going to do my own analysis, right? My analysis is going to take me into, this was not a search. Then they got a warrant that seems to be valid, that justified everything else they did. So there's no violation. No violation means this is good for the prosecution, bad for the defendant. So if the defendant is filing the motion, I want to deny the motion. So now, per my method, I'm looking at either C or D only, right? And then D says deny the motion because the defendant had no reasonable expectation of privacy from aerial observation. That's again, Zoe, me choosing the answer choice that not only matches my outcome, but best matches what I saw was the focal point of this question. It came down to this aerial observation. D stands out as the best match for my analysis. Whereas C, deny the motion because a warrant is not required for a search of a residential yard. That just seems like it's just like too open, right, of a statement that's not necessarily getting to the specifics of what's going on. So there we go. Make sense? Sweet. All right. So everybody, again, that's how you go through a question, quickly learn from it. But as we move on to the next question and try to practice this again, let's take away some things from this, which is number one, remember, like every question, right? If I want to make a multiple choice question, I'm a bar taker, or excuse me, a bar question maker. It's like I pull up an outline, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I want to test rule of technology, right? Or use of technology. So I want to test this rule. I look at the rule. I then create a fact pattern around it, right? And then I present it to you to try to trip you up with some trippy answer choices. Your job, Zoe, everybody, is to reverse engineer the question, is to go from the fact pattern to what is the specific rule, to application of that rule, to then the clarity of what the obvious answer choice should be. So yes, the discipline is that identify and stay attached to your rule. And so again, Christine, again, I want to give you kudos for actually being aligned with the right outcome. But I promise you that leaning on that type of approach is also going to lead us down the wrong path at times, because again, it's not just 100% attached, tailored to just the rule, which is here, this was held out to the public because they were in public airspace, right? We were going into like policy and other things and other reasons. So, yes. Let's take one question or a few questions before we move on to the next one. Zoe?
Sorry, I keep like not unmuting myself. But for this question specifically that we just did, were they trying to test technology or like the flyover rule regarding the 400 feet?
So technology could have been at play, but it wasn't. So they weren't trying to test technology, just there's the absence of it. And then,
Okay.
yeah, just the idea held out to the public or not. And so again, under the facts, we have to assume that this was held out to the public.
Okay, so it's like, unless there was some fact in this that said like this person owned the airspace above their home or something like very specific.
Or you're more so looking for something like the helicopter dipped down so close to the house to be able to identify marijuana that they were no longer in public airspace. That's going too far.
Okay.
Yeah, it's no longer held out to the public. If you had to breach public airspace, right, breach into private air or private space in order to see it. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Good. All right. So again, we're doing a little 2-for-1 here. It's a little crim pro that we're learning, but hopefully we can hone in and see this formula that we're learning. Let's put the formula back into action here with question number 2. Aaron, let's go ahead and do this one together. I'll walk you through my steps and you go through it. So first thing is, you got 5 seconds. Buzzwords. Don't read the whole sentences of each answer choice, but just buzzwords that pop out to you. What's the buzzword in A?
Probably search or incident to arrest.
Yep. What else?
Reasonably. Oh, on the first one, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Reason. Yeah. And we don't want to be that, like, try to find 1 or 2 per sentence or per answer choice. So you got here, search into lawful arrest. Next.
Passenger compartment, car, traffic stop, traffic
Good.
violation.
We can stop there. What subject and what specific rule does this sound like we can say that this is?
Will sound like, some sort of search, automobile search, incident to arrest, possibly. Fourth Amendment.
Exactly. And all those are possible. And so, like, because then we don't know specifically what exception and all those things, right? We just want to be like, all right, this looks like another 4th Amendment question. We're in Crim Pro, 4th Amendment, possibly a warrant exception. And that's good enough. So that's everybody how you only spend 2 to 5 seconds, just like literally like, what can I get from skimming those answer choices? Good. All right. And let me switch the Slido to question number 2 now. All right. So again, we're going to skip the call to question, just go straight into the facts. And now let's like do some reading comprehension. Read it out loud, but also feel free to like, give me kind of the commentary in between sentences as needed to like summarize what's going on or analyze as you go. But yeah, go ahead and read this and read the fact pattern.
Yeah, so we got state troopers lawfully stopped a driver on the turnpike exceeding the speed limit by 4 miles. So he wasn't going too fast, but possibly breaking the law on miles per hour. One trooper approached the car to warn the driver to drive within the speed limit. The other trooper remained in the patrol car and ran a computer check on the license of the driver's car. The computer indicated that there was an outstanding warrant for the driver's arrest for unpaid traffic tickets. So we have a possible arrest warrant. The troopers then arrested the driver. After handcuffing her, the troopers searched her and the car and discovered 10 gasoline bags of heroin in the paper bag on the seat. I'm sorry, on the back seat of the. Thank you. On the back seat of the car. Later was learned that the driver had paid the outstanding traffic tickets 10 days earlier, and the warrant had been squashed. But the clerk of the court had failed to update the computer, which continued to list the warrant as outstanding. The driver was charged with unlawful possession of heroin. Her attorney filed a motion to suppress the use as evidence of heroin found in the car.
Okay. So first off, Aaron, is there a lot going on in this fact pattern?
Yes, I feel like there's a lot of facts.
Yeah, a lot. And remember, with multiple choice, even when there's a lot of fact, a lot of facts, or a fact-rich question, you have to believe that this is multiple choice, designed to be answered in like 2 minutes or less. And so, yeah, there has to be light through this tunnel. And again, it's about having a system. That's number one. Number two, what's the emotional outcome to have here? Like, they're trying to play an emotional card here, and the emotions would likely lead you down what path here? Finding for who?
You probably want to find for the driver.
Because?
You probably want to find for the driver because, she already paid the tickets. So it's like, well, it shouldn't have been there. It was an error on the clerk, not her fault. It's it's on the officer's fault. Like all she did was drive, for, barely over the speed. So.
Exactly, right? So, and that's why, again, like, there's so many ways to go with this based off of emotion, right? And to be fair, you could have emotion on the other side as well, Aaron. Just for the sake of it, what's the emotion on the other side?
Well, she shouldn't have had the drugs in the first place.
This person got drugs, like, they deserve to go down, right? Like, right? So you could have emotion, right? Is the idea, and we don't want emotion on either side. We want to know the rule being tested, do an analysis. So this is Fourth Amendment. I just gave us more or less the big picture, at least, framework of how we go through this. What did we say it was? You remember the mnemonic?
Yes, GRS.
GSR.
GSR.
There we go. Appreciate it. And so, do we have government action here, Aaron?
Yes, we do. The officers.
Oh. So again, for the way that this works for standing everybody, again, a little 2-for-1 on Learning Crim Pro at my strategy, you want to list out all the things that led to the taking of the evidence. So what are all the searches and seizures that led to this? Like, starting from the top.
All right, yeah. So we had the first one with the officers actually pulling over the car for driving too fast.
All right. So stopping car was number one. What happened next?
He went to her car, and the other trooper ran her license plate.
Don't give me the lead up. I just want clean, clear. What were the searches or seizures?
The search of the car.
Something else came before that.
Oh, sorry. They arrested the driver.
Exactly. So you have arrest of D. After the arrest, what was next?
They searched the handcuffed her, and then they searched the car.
All right. Then they
searched her and the car.
Exactly. We don't need to necessarily focus so much on the her aspect because nothing came from the search of her, but there is that as well. So we could put search her / car. But I think more so the focus is going to be the car. That's what was found. And then they had the seizure of
the heroin.
The heroin. So let me move this over here. Let me get rid of reasonableness. And then this is connected to the seizure of heroin. Everybody, you're getting some pro tips on how to navigate Crim Pro right now. Because again, this is like separate from our general strategy. This is a great way to just stay structured and go through Fourth Amendment questions. What you next want to do is talk about reasonableness for 1, 2, and 3. Was stopping the car reasonable, Aaron?
Yes, I would say it was reasonable.
And we know that without having to do much of an analysis because
She drove too fast, unfortunately.
reading comprehension, look at those facts.
Yeah, she drove too fast. She's
Nope.
oh
Look
wait,
at the which what are you missing? There's something that does the analysis for you.
I don't know. Oh, lawfully stopped, even easier.
Yeah, right. And so look, everybody, again, small things, reading comprehension, silent killer. Aaron, those are the type of things when if this was an essay, right? You got to bring over not the fact that you were saying that, oh, it's because she was speeding. No, like the facts state that this was a lawful stop. That's what we're then looking for. So again, good reading comprehension. But yes, this is going to be reasonable under stopping the car. Next, the arrest of the defendant. All right. So the arrest. What is our rule for arresting? Either, okay, let's take a look at our rule. My rule for arrest is under SILA. Lawfully arrested when the arrest was pursuant to an arrest warrant or there was probable cause that the defendant violated the law, plus the defendant was in public at the time of the arrest. All right, so what do we have here as far as the arrest of the defendant?
Well, they did have the arrest warrant on the defendant, but also, I mean, I don't know if her running, going too fast, but they had an arrest warrant, so I would assume that would be enough for the first prong to be met.
Yeah, and that's where we have to go to then rule on the warrant section, because that's, again, going with the question, going with what the focus is here. That is really, it's at play. It's like this whole issue with the warrant that it wasn't actually valid, right? Does something like this ring a bell, Aaron, the good faith reliance exception?
Yeah, if you can, yeah, it's right there. Even if the court determines that the issued warrant was improperly issued, the evidence may still be admissible if prosecution can show the officer had good faith reliance on the issued warrant, which you could say that he had good faith because he didn't know, or the officer didn't know, that the warrant was paid. They just know what is on the computer. So you can say that they had good faith.
Perfect. Is there room for emotion in our analysis, Aaron?
Nah.
No, I don't like the outcome, but we don't got time for it. We don't have energy for it. This is not the place to change the law, right? We're going with the law, and it tells us that this is the good faith exception. So the good faith exception applied to the arrest warrant, is that going to make the arrest lawful?
Yes.
Yeah, so this was reasonable. All right. Then you had a search of the car. Okay. Was there a warrant to search the car?
No, there was not a warrant to search the car.
Okay. And then you have to go through your warrant exceptions. Your options are SILA, plain view, automobile, consent, exigency, Terry, and Peyton. All right. We go through SILA first. Is this going to be SILA?
I think it would amount to SILA. Yes, I think it could.
And so SILA says you can arrest after a warrant. Excuse me. You can search after you arrest. And so are you using SILA of a person or using SILA of a car here?
Well, in this analysis, we're going to use SILA of a car.
So it says SILA of a car. You can use that if there was a lawful arrest or one of the following is present. The defendant is unsecured. Was the defendant unsecured at the time they searched the car?
Nope.
Nope. So we're not using that one. The officer has reason to believe that evidence connected to the arrest is in the car. So you're saying that one's met? So this is where you detached from the rule. You kind of had an outcome in mind already before actually attaching to your rule, right? So again, we're kind of moving a little too fast. And so, yeah, none of the elements for SILA of a car are met. So when we come here, yeah, SILA is not going to work. Plain view, not gonna work. You have to go into the car. Automobile. Automobile says you have to have probable cause of contraband or evidence of a crime in the car. Is there any facts to suggest that there's evidence of a crime inside the car at the time of this arrest?
Nah, nope.
They were pulled over for going over 4 miles per hour of the speed limit. They were had a warrant for unpaid traffic tickets. Nothing suggests that there's evidence of a crime in this car. Don't let emotion, just because they found heroin, don't let emotion get to you, right? As far as the analysis. So yeah, no automobile, no consent. Nothing amounts to exigency, right? Everybody likes to throw in exigency sometimes, but like, no, was this necessary to prevent destruction? Was this person in hot pursuit or persons were seriously injured? No, none of these are the case. No exigency, no Terry, no Peyton. So was there a warrant exception here?
No, there was not.
So we have then a search that is not reasonable. Does that mean yes violation or no violation?
It means there was a violation.
Yes violation. Yes violation is good for the defendant or the prosecution.
The defendant.
That's great for the defendant. So that means you want to grant the defendant's motion or deny the defendant's motion.
I'm gonna grant it.
Great. Aaron, can you appreciate that like train of thought that we had to do from our analysis to then get to how to handle the motion?
Yep.
Yeah. Everybody, like take a look at how you do that. You do the analysis for Crim Pro, right? You figure out yes violation or no violation. You figure out who that's good for, and then that tells you to grant or deny, right? That's how you can make sure you don't mix those up. So, should the motion be granted? We're looking for one of the yeses. That's between C or D. Which of these is then going to be the better answer choice?
Because there was no arrest. Well, let's see. Motion because yes, because there was no arrest for a traffic violation and no lawful arrest could be made under the basis of the warrant. Well, that's not true. So I'd say D.
And you did process elimination. Also, remember I said, Aaron, look for the answer choice that best also like embodies the analysis that we did in the focus. And this one we talked about. Yes, because there was no probable cause or reasonable suspicion to believe drugs were in the car. We did actually have that as part of our analysis for the automobile. So that one is feeling more connected on top of the fact that C is just wrong. So yeah, D is then the right answer. All right. So there we go. How you feel about going through that question, Aaron?
And I feel solid. I feel pretty good.
Good. Awesome. All right. So that's another question that we have now gone through. So let me start off with the two people that we've heard from so far. Aaron, I'll start with you. What are you personally seeing through this formula as the adjustments you need to make? Are you buying into it? Just giving your now at this point initial feedback to seeing this formula in action. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I actually have your course. It's about a year old or 2 years old. So like I've seen this stuff in terms of the actual like formula, and I actually use it every time I do multiple choice, and I enjoy it. Now I will say when I've been using, I use Adaptabar, and because I started using it and it was like it helped, and then on Adaptabar, it actually has some, it actually has where like what questions you're actually doing. And so I realized that it was matching up fairly well in terms of, so I would just try to, go through the, quickly of the answers and then try to match it up. Is it the actual same in terms of the actual classifications of the content that we're doing? And so I find it helpful. Prior to once I graduated law school, I didn't use that approach. I actually used the, read the call of the question approach first. And it just didn't work for me that well. And so, but I do think this approach does work. And I will say, I feel like it's worked because I've seen it in my results within the multiple choice and me doing Adaptabar. So I say that it does work, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah, my man. Awesome. Okay. So we already got a believer. We already got somebody that's using it, and that's awesome. Zoe, this is new to you. What is your now initial impression? Any questions, thoughts? This is an opportunity to again walk away from this with what feels like, all right, whether you're going to use it or not, clarity as you leave the session. So yeah, any thoughts, questions from what you so far?
Yeah, so I feel like it's I mean, not that I've done every single question, but it definitely is harder to come to try to use a different approach when I've been using one approach that has worked for like
Hmm.
some time now. Um, so I feel like it makes sense. I think I just need more practice with it to determine if it's actually effective. Like it's great to hear that for Aaron it's worked, but like because it's like my first time seeing it, I'm like I don't really know. Like because I feel like I've been told so many things and
Hmm.
even like looking at the answer choices, that has always been like I always did that and I would never get multiple choice right. So I have a fear of like looking at the answers and that's just like how I've made like through law school looking at the answer choices have just always, even if I skim them, it causes me more anxiety because I'm like there's four choices, like one of them has to be right. So
Wait,
I
so
think
am I hearing you correctly then that it actually then works better to not look at the answer choices in the way
yeah,
that
I think
got it?
for me, I think maybe it's just like maybe that's just one part of it that I skip out on and maybe I do like the next five, like the read the question.
Yeah.
Like
Because
I
I'm
think
not,
that
and the thing is, again, like to your point, I'm actually doing what you're doing. I'm not really reading the answer choices. Again, like I'm literally just like in a Terminator style, scanning them for just like buzzwords to let me know what topic I'm in. But I
yeah.
hear what
But
you're
I think it's just because I haven't done it before, it's like harder for me.
fair enough.
Because I'm like, okay, how do you, that's why I was like, what do you mean by skim like, I was like, skim, like, I feel like even the
How do
definition
you
of
do that?
skim in law school was like, read the entire case. And I was like, what?
Exactly.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
hold on. But I think it's like beneficial and like how it works. And I think I'm definitely going to try it, like moving forward to see if it, you know, gives me
Yeah,
good
can move the
results.
needle. So here's the last thing that I'll share, right? Because I wholeheartedly, even if you're currently using something else, like for all intents and purposes, right? If you're doing a particular method right now, everybody, and it's working, like by all means, keep it, right? Like if you feel like the needle is moving and you have something that's worked, like yeah, if it's not broke, don't fix it. At the same token, I feel very strongly about this approach, and my approach is really rooted, I think, in a very scientific, right, progressional development type of way, where this is really going to lend more towards mastery of the information. Because again, look at everything that we just did, right? Like all we did was treat this as a miniature essay where we read the question, spotted the issue, did the analysis, did the conclusion, and then went into the answer choice to figure out the best one that matches, which is overall, again, a skill set that's going to translate in this case to both multiple choice and essay. So, all that to say, you can never go wrong with this approach. But of course, lean into what works best. And so happy that we're getting some, again, some initial impressions. And everybody should try it and yeah, go from there. We'll do another question before I give you guys all some materials you can take with you to remember this stuff as you go into practice. But yeah, Aaron, and then after that, Zoe.
Yeah, I will say like I was in that place to where I was trying because what I was doing wasn't working, I would say. And so it it was something new and I had to buy in. But like DeAndre said, like it gives you that mastery. And so there's times where I'll go through it and I'm like, I know, like in my mind before I read the questions, I know this is the answer. And so if it's wrong, I'm like, how? There's no way. And so now like I'm actually trying to like really like dig and dive deep and try to figure out why. And it's really kind of changed my focus on that. So like I feel like I'm going into a question with more confidence. Just and again, I think it could easily be just because I've switched my approach to the MBEs, but I do feel more confident with it.
Awesome, man. Sorry about that phone call. That was in the middle of you going through that. But yes, I got all of that. And the comment that I wanted to make on that was, let me see if I can recall it. got thrown off there was you were going through it, the practice. Oh man, it was something good. But I'll let Zoe go and see if it comes back to me. But thank you for sharing that. And everybody, yes, like that is the idea, is to essentially buy in, and over time it works. Oh, I remember what it was. Based off of what Aaron was saying, and Zoe, we can go back to our example together to kind of see also how this method allows you to master it and improve. Is that when your outcome and your answer selection is based off of an analysis and not so much just like a general feeling or what answer choice popped out, but like you did an analysis, you can then also then pinpoint where in your analysis did you go wrong. So then you can fix that holistically, right? As opposed to just like, oh, I read the question. Oh, B sounded good, so I went with B. But it's like, what do I fix? When I find out B is wrong, it's a little harder to fix the problem as opposed to doing your analysis, seeing, oh, I went wrong here. Okay, cool, fix that, and I can move on. So awesome, great share, Aaron.
Yeah,
Uh,
I really appreciate Aaron giving his feedback on this, because it's like, obviously you know what you're talking about, but actually having like another student say that it's working also like makes a big difference, because I feel like it's scary when these people who are like, oh, I've read 10,000 like multiple choice questions and I know that this works. It's like harder to like conceptualize it. But
mhm.
I do feel like, because today I did like a short practice and there was like 5 questions and I thought it was only supposed to be on torts. And I did notice that I did have to skim the answer choices. So I'm like, maybe I'm doing this in a way, but I need to like narrow it down. And what you say,
Yes.
just like the more practice you do, the faster you get. Like, because I guess like that's also like time is not on our side during this.
Exactly. And Zoe, I can just short of guarantee you that you're going to want to know what subject and, if possible, what topic you're in before reading a question. Because when you're doing 200 multiple choice questions on the day of the bar, 100 at a time, and it's jumping from subject to subject, you need some sense of where am I at before you get into your facts. Because otherwise, you're going to have to reread it again to put it in the context of like what's going on. So, yes. Good. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead now and do number 3. I want to see now if you guys can all do this on your own. So number 3, let me pull up the Slido to move it to number 3 for you all. And go ahead, everybody, and do number 3, and then put your answer choice into the to the Slido, and let's see if you can put it into action on your own now. Zoe, should we have our outlines by our side as we do this question?
Always, until you can't,
Always.
until you can't have them by your side, have them by your side.
Yeah, so outlines by your side, lean into your rules, everybody. Yeah, good luck. Go for number 3. All right. Let's start to go through this one. So we have majority of us had A, then we had some B and C as well. Let's talk through this. So the right answer is going to be A. And so again, hopefully we saw this, another loaded question, right? But what we have to do is simply apply our steps. We go through it, authority exceeded the authority, initial search. This is just yet again another Fourth Amendment question, everybody. Okay. And talking about learning patterns, right? Like, look how just right now, by having done 3 questions in a row on Fourth Amendment, we're starting to get into a flow or rhythm, hopefully, with these questions, right? What's the formula? GSR. Okay. And so ultimately, the man was charged with unlawful possession of the machine gun. We have to look at all the things, the searches and seizures that led to that. The first thing that we have was an anonymous tip that there was heroin inside a red package mailed from a foreign country to the United States. Pursuant to this tips, the United States officers opened the red package and found heroin inside. That's possibly the first search, right? Is searching package, opening up somebody's package. Package, okay. They then resealed it. The FBI was notified as agents watched the package delivered to the address. Then they got a warrant. I wanted to highlight that, to not cross it out. They got a warrant to search the house. About 2 hours after it was delivered, the warrant was executed at the house. The man who opened the door was arrested. So we have arrest. Then we have they executed the agents found the package. The doors open and the agents found the package. So they searched the home and they searched the closet. So search home / closet to ultimately seize the heroin. All right. And then after that, what also did they then search somebody, anybody?
They
Everybody.
searched the Foot Locker.
They searched the Foot Locker. Yep. So then we have a search of Foot Locker in basement. All right. So what we have to do is go through reasonableness for all of these things. And that search in the Foot Locker in the basement is what led to the seizure of, why does it keep doing that? The seizure of the gun. Okay, so searching the package, is this going to be reasonable? If you said no, you wouldn't be incredibly off here, because this happens to be just a very nuanced rule. That there's a rule that international mail can be searched, right? So this is just like a very one-off, very specific, nuanced rule that international mail. So the fact that this was from a foreign country into the United States, you can search that, and that just is what it is. So you don't have to go through all of your traditional, warrant or warrant exception here. There's just a yes there. So if you got this question wrong for that reason, you're feeling pretty good, because that's just something to add on to your understanding. Realize that's a big part of doing multiple choice, is like adding on to your understanding. So that's valid, searching the package. Next, you have the arrest. Here, they had probable cause, but they weren't in public, but they were lawfully allowed to go into the house because they had a search warrant. So even though if it wasn't in public, they could be in the house, and therefore this arrest is valid. Search of the home. Yes, they had a search warrant. So that's the reason why this is reasonable. They had a search warrant for that and for the heroin, and all of that looked to be valid with that search warrant. Then you have the search of the Foot Locker. The search warrant cannot be used to search the Foot Locker because the search warrant was for the heroin. They found the heroin. So you would then need one of the warrant exceptions. You would again want to have up your list of warrant exceptions, and you would run down that entire list to realize that none of them apply. All right. So there is no reasonableness here. So this means yes violation, which Zoe, if yes violation, that's good for which party?
For the defendant.
And if you're for the defendant, that means we should grant or deny the motion.
Deny.
Grant.
I mean grant, sorry.
You should grant, good. We should grant. Okay, and so now It's a yes or no. So should the court grant, we're like looking for one of the yeses, and it would be between A and B. And it says A because the search warrant exceeded the authority granted by the warrant. Like that literally was part of our analysis. That's aligned. B says yes because the initial search by the customs officers was without probable cause. This is right. But again, this is not necessarily indicative of why the answer is the answer, which is like, yeah, like they could do the initial search without probable cause, whatever, like that, all pursuant to that rule. But the issue here is that stopped at their heroin, and yeah, there was nothing to justify the search of the Foot Locker. So A is again simply aligned with all that hard work we just did. So, all right, everybody. Yeah, I'll take a question from Alexandra, but I think we can pause there. It's going through some practice. You guys are seeing the method behind the madness. 9 times out of 10, this leads me to the right answer. Zoe, am I concerned with the 1 time out of 10 that it doesn't?
No.
Absolutely not. If you score 90% on the multiple choice on the day of the bar exam, you are in a great position. This is a numbers game, right? So yes, like that concept of like every now and again, are you going to get like do this full analysis and the analysis, like, and then you pick the wrong one? Sure. But take what you can from that and add it on. But what we're playing is a numbers game, right? This is a game of passing the bar, getting the points game. And this method that I'm sharing with you is definitely proven to do just that. So hopefully you all see it and use it and to your benefit. Alexandra, question.
Yeah, sorry, my kiddo. I'm trying to put him to bed. How do you how do you suggest we work on like endurance with like 100 questions?
Yes. Okay. So please keep that question. I'm going to open it up to general Q&A. Let me do a quick walkthrough of some information for you all and some stuff I told you could like take a screenshot of and have something pretty. So real quick, common issues with multiple choice. We saw it today. We talked about it today, reading comprehension. So make sure we get that down. Next, second guessing ourselves. We talked about that today, right? Practice that daily opportunity to do that. And then a lot of times we either have no strategy or a subpar strategy. And of course, I shared with you our strategy. Passers don't fight the test, they adapt to it. And so this applies to back letter law, strategy and approach to writing, strategy and approach to multiple choice. Everybody who participated today definitely demonstrated a mindset that's of acceptance, right? Even with a little bit of natural, like, you know, let's say Zoe, right? For example, of like, okay, I just got this. Let me kind of like, you know, evaluate this for a second. Like that's even okay. It's whether it's strategy, whether it's the law, whether you're doing questions and you're fighting the outcomes, like that is what anybody in here, if you identify as, you have to let go, right? Like this exam is already hard enough. Do not fight yourself and do not fight the exam. You have to go with it. Okay. You know, I get so many times students are like upset at me when we're going through multiple choice questions and that's the answer. And it's like, look, like I didn't write the questions. I might not always agree with it. Right. But this is what it is. And this is what I know to be the outcome based off of the sequence of facts. And I am trained to follow the patterns, right? Again, removing my emotion from it. So again, that's the mindset you want to be in. And so there's a recipe for success. We talked about a little bit of that. Discipline now equals freedom later. So again, discipline was a big part of this. Early adopters do better. This is from our orientation. So this is stuff I give to people in the beginning of our program, but the message stays true for you all. The idea is that passing this exam is all in your preparation, and your preparation is successful if you know what you're doing, right? As far as strategy, and then you're disciplined in practicing that strategy so it can actually improve. So realize that like that's ultimately what bar prep is all about, is creating good habits and consistently doing them and moving the needle, right? And is it grueling and is it long and is it brick by brick, day by day? Absolutely. But that's the whole mindset on how you win this game. And then here's the strategy from a big picture. So you can take a picture. Oh, first, make sure you do practice. 22, I say 2200, sometimes 2000, but yeah, 2200 is that sweet spot for me. Quality of the questions, as we learned today, it's not about just flying through them. You got to make sure you're learning from them. And then here, you can feel free to take a screenshot if you wanted something nice and pretty for remembering your steps. Okay. Yes, one of the steps I did I was like, am I forgetting a step? I talked about it, right? Me and Zoe talked about it, like have your rules by your side. And we actually did it when we went to the legally fit material. But it's actually a step that I have of look up your rule. So yeah, a reminder to do most of your questions open book. Okay. All right. I will stop share here. And I will take any now open Q&A questions. I'll start with Alexandra's, which is the endurance. I would simply build yourself up to doing them. So wherever you're at, right? Like try to make incremental growth over time. So if it's like I could do 30 questions without losing focus. Okay. Can I now push that to 35 and you stay locked in? Or can I push that to 40? So you see how far you can push yourself, number one. Number two, I learned that there's actually tools that I can do to push my endurance level. So I realized that, and I put on the beginning survey, like who's diagramming? I'm a big fan of diagramming questions. So like I'll doodle, right? Like P/D or, contract between these two people, like just pen to paper keeps me from glossing over the facts, which helps with endurance. So diagramming is a tool that I'll use. And there might be other tools, right? Also, if you need to take a break, that could be a tool where it's just like after, that you can even use on the bar exam. Like after every 30 questions, I take a minute to just stop and breathe for a second, some deep breaths, some regather, recenter. And yeah, like, are those minutes valuable? Yeah. But if you dedicated a total of 4 minutes to breathing, that's going to make you do better, help you do better, by all means, like that is the juice is worth the squeeze there. On the day of the exam, there's even strategy along the lines of punting certain questions, right? Like this fact pattern is like a full 2 pages long, right? Or a full page long. Like I'm going to skip this, or like, I clearly don't know this one. I'm going to skip it to like allow more time for other things. So those are some things to play with as well. Okay, cool. Let's go to the next question, Aaron.
Yeah, and this is a question about the actual MBEs on the day of the exam. So I was on the bar had like a Q&A session, maybe I don't know, in April, I think it was. And I joined that and I could be wrong, but this is what I took from it. And so this is what I've been kind of going based off of, is that they're changing the MBE format. And so it's still 200 questions, but it's, I think 50 questions, a small break, then 50 questions, then you have your lunch, and then that same like cycle again. And so I was wondering if that was true. um, and
Yeah, so that's a great question. I have to actually confirm that myself, but I heard the same thing, but I have not looked that up because there's been so much movement and just kind of talks before confirmation. So I have not either heard or done the research myself to solidify what that format is going to be as far as breaks. So that'll be something good to look up.
yeah,
Uh,
and so because like based on that, that's kind of how I've been doing my MBEs now, is I'll just do a block of 50 because I found myself and again, I don't know if that's the right approach, but what I found myself doing is I was fading in the latter hours of me doing. I was like, man, I'm fading, like I'm getting the answer incorrectly because I'm not thoroughly reading all the way through because I'm getting tired. And so I was just talking, I was spitballing with one of my friends, and he was saying, well, maybe if you try and practice doing a lot more at one time, maybe it will. And so I still do I sit down, I still, after each question, or I'll still make sure I do my review. So it may take me forever, but like that's kind of how I do it. And I feel like that has helped me, at least with my conditioning, in terms of I feel like I can go a lot longer because I take longer, like I just do more questions in a longer time block. I kind of had to just force myself to, because if not, I would just do the 10 and then the 15. And I feel like I wasn't like, I felt like I was getting tired.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like the question of endurance is a lot like endurance in any other category of life, right? Like if you want to hold your breath longer underwater, like what do? Go underwater and try to hold your breath longer, right? And like keep pushing it. So yeah, part of getting that endurance is just like pushing yourself to new heights to allow yourself to rise to it. And then Aaron, you're taking the California bar, right?
Yeah.
So I'm putting it in the chat now. It appears as though they are keeping it. This is directly from the bar website. Take a look at it, but took a quick look at it. And yeah, it looks like they're doing the traditional format of 100 questions at a time. But yes, keep working towards that, everybody. That endurance is a challenge, you know, so it's like you're not alone in that. Timing for me was a challenge. There was like, for the morning session, I mean, I was really bad in prep. I got better by the time of the exam, but I still probably didn't get to like 5 questions for each session. But I got to the point where I was okay with that personally, because again, this is a numbers game. So I got to the point where my accuracy was high enough on my 95 out of 100 questions that I was okay sacrificing those 5. So again, just like keep that in mind as you all, you know, figure out your strategy, play to your strengths and play to your weaknesses. Next, Renelle.
Hi.
Hey.
So mine isn't a question as much of a comment, for people who are like trying to transition to your strategy. Because I've been doing your strategy, for like, it's been like a month now, I think. So I will say that in the beginning, it is difficult, especially when like simple things like skimming the answer choices when you are now starting. Like I was literally going through each answer. Like, so when I started contracts, which is like the first subject, I was literally like going through each one, and I would take like, sometimes I would take like 20 minutes on one question in
Yeah.
contracts, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, something is wrong with me. Like, why is this taking me so long? And eventually, by the time I got to torts on property, I mean, I'm only on remedies, so I haven't gotten to crim pro as yet, so I couldn't really be of much assistance in this section. But by the time I got to torts, it was coming like so much easier to me. And it's like second nature right now. So now it's just like you literally will just spend 2 seconds just skimming just to see like what topic it's on. And then like after I did enough, like it just became so much easier. So I would say for like
Yes.
people who are like second guessing a method, it does work. It doesn't take as long as you think that it might take to work. I would say like one subject of you doing it, by the time you get to like another subject, it's easier. So that's my takeaway that I wanted to share.
Thank you for sharing that, Renelle. And yes, I think as Zoe had mentioned earlier, it's always helpful, you know, not just hearing it from dad or mom, but hearing it from sibling. So hearing it from like somebody who's literally in it and has used it goes a long way. And yes, everybody, again, like the reason why I love bar prep is that it's like, you know, it's so again, so many parallels to real life. And as we know in real life, like when we're trying to adopt a new bedtime routine, a new morning routine, a new eating habit, you know, like all these things are very difficult when you are first trying to do them. But then if you commit to them, you know, especially if you know it's good, then at some point it becomes secondhand, second nature, and then you get all the true benefits of it. So to her point, you know, do expect it to take you a little bit longer to get into that groove. As she mentioned, it could be anywhere from 20 minutes per question, right? But then it's just like stick with it. And next thing you know, not only are you going through the questions faster than before, you're also doing so with now more mastery and more accuracy. So awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Renelle. And yes, by the way, we need to also catch up soon. I want to hear about how your process is going. But yes, everybody, I think that then concludes our session for today. Congratulations on making it through our MBE MasterClass. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. It's my passion giving you all some tips and advice on how to be successful on this exam. Thanks again to our partners, BWL, for hosting this. Again, super, super amazing that they have allocated resources, time, money, energy into partnering with us and setting this up for you guys to all take advantage of this for free. So yeah, let's all please thank them both, verbally and through any actions that we can, through support of the organization, through spreading the word, attending their events, and all those types of things. But yes, other than that, you guys were great, and good luck with the bar exam. 1% better every day. Trust the process, stay in it, and I'm rooting for you all. All right, everybody, have a great night.
Thank you.
You are so welcome.